Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Charles with Cash Out DFS, and today I'm going to be talking about the NFL Week 10 DraftKings slate. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about my top plays and analysis of the whole slate as it pertains to the Sunday main slate on DraftKings. So if you would, please drop me a like under this video and also subscribe to my channel. I would greatly appreciate it, as it helps me come out with new content, new videos, and the more content that I feel that I can make, the better that we can all become and be more successful DraftKings NFL players. So without further ado, I am going to jump in and we can start talking about the player pricing for DraftKings and some of my top plays. So for quarterback, one play that I'm really looking at is Drew Brees at 6,700 playing the Atlanta Falcons at home. The New Orleans Saints had a bye week last week. So with that being said, his last game was against Arizona, where Brees completed 34 of 43 passes for completion for a passer rating of 116.4, equating to 28.92 DraftKings points. So he had a really good game last time. Then he had a bye. Now the Saints get to play the Atlanta Falcons. So here's something to note about the Falcons. And here, this is the second worst team in terms of allowing points per game, fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. And it's right around 24 fantasy points per game for opposing quarterbacks playing against the Atlanta Falcons. So at 6,700, I think Drew Brees is in a really good spot because he gets a full complement of his weapons back, as Alvin Kamara is slated to be healthy again for this game. We all know about Michael Thomas. Jared Cook becomes viable again if he's healthy. And then Latavius Murray has a change of pace back, has proven that he can catch the ball out of the backfield as well. So I really like Drew Brees in this game. And then another player that I think is in a good position this week is Jameis Winston. So if we take a look at Jameis Winston's game log, he's been fairly consistent. 24 points, 26 points, 21, 17.46. So he's hovering around this 20 to 24 point range in his last four games. And what I really like about Jameis Winston is that this week he gets to play the Arizona Cardinals. So the Cardinals actually give up the most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks at about 25 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Jameis Winston also has two all-pro wide receivers on his team in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Throw in the fact that Arizona has trouble rushing the passer, which is one of the things that Jameis Winston struggles with, which is pressure in his face. He can be prone to making bad decisions as well as fumbling and throwing some interceptions. But with the lack of pass rush that Arizona has been able to generate, I think Jameis Winston is in a really good position here at home against the Cardinals. And as you can see, they're the 30th ranked pass defense in the NFL. So one other player that's an honorable mention for me is Lamar Jackson. And this is because of the way that Baltimore has been playing with Lamar Jackson and how they've been using him as well. And additionally to that, it's also because he gets to play the Cincinnati Bengals again, who in Week 6, Lamar Jackson scored 33.64 DraftKings points. But he had most of his points coming from his rushing stats, where he had 152 yards on 19 carries and a touchdown. So we know that Cincinnati can't stop the run, and Cincinnati gives up some of the most points to running backs in the NFL. But with that being said, I really like Lamar Jackson here as well. That's why he comes in as my honorable mention. So for running back, obviously Christian McCaffrey is at the top of the board. But if you're looking to try to save some salary and not pay $10.5K for Christian McCaffrey, here's someone that you should look at, and that is Mark Ingram. As I just mentioned with Lamar Jackson, Cincinnati really struggles against opposing running backs. And Ingram had a very successful week last week against the Patriots. And last time Ingram played against Cincinnati, he had 15.4 DraftKings points. However, he had a couple goal line carries that Lamar Jackson got, and because of that, Mark Ingram could have had 2 touchdowns, but instead only finished with 1. So Lamar Jackson has been dealing with a little bit of an injury, and since Baltimore is heavily favored against the Cincinnati Bengals in a game that Cincinnati should just kind of give up because Cincinnati is tanking right now for a high draft pick, I think Mark Ingram is in a very good position With that being said, Ingram has not scored a touchdown in 3 straight games, so I think he has some positive touchdown regression coming towards him, meaning his averages should equal out here. And since he hasn't had a touchdown in a while, I think that there's a very good chance that he'll get one. In addition to that, he gets to play Cincinnati, who give up a lot of points to running backs on the ground. So they give up roughly 31 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, and that's a really good value for Mark Ingram if you're looking to pay down at running back. Another player that I'm liking is David Montgomery, and he plays for the Chicago Bears, and he's playing at home versus the Detroit Lions. Now, Montgomery has really been able to get it going the last 2 weeks on the ground as the Bears have been more and more committed to giving the ball to him, and he gets a really good matchup this week as the Lions just cannot stop the run. Like last week, Josh Jacobs hurt the Lions. The week before that, Saquon Barkley hurt the Lions. And the week before that, Dalvin Cook hurt the Lions. But I digress. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that next week, as we look back on this, will I be saying that David Montgomery hurt the Lions as well? Well, I think that's a high possibility of that happening. So I like David Montgomery due to that fact. Here's some statistics to kind of support that. The Lions give up just about 21 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. Chicago's at home. They've been more and more committed to Montgomery. As Trubisky has struggled, they've kind of had to change their offensive system a little bit and just decide to ride David Montgomery. And against Detroit, I think Montgomery will have a very positive game script and game flow. So I think Montgomery is in a good position here. Another honorable mention for running back, I believe, is Aaron Jones. Now, Aaron Jones really burnt me last week. I thought that he would have a much more productive game against the Chargers, but that didn't happen. He ended up not getting the touchdown between the two running backs as Jamal Williams got the receiving touchdown from Aaron Rodgers last week. But fortunately for Aaron Jones, he gets to play the Carolina Panthers this week, which is why he is earning my honorable mention. It's at home in a game Green Bay is favored, and I don't anticipate him only receiving 8 rushing attempts or 8 carries once again for the second straight week. So I think Aaron Jones is due for a bounce-back game because of that. Let's go to wide receiver. And my number one play at wide receiver this week is Michael Thomas. So the correlation here is Michael Thomas and Drew Brees as a stack, which is what I think will be a very highly owned stack, but for good reason. Let me give you it this way. Michael Thomas has 99 targets on the season so far. 99. And he's catching roughly 75% of his targets or more. And due to that fact, I really like Michael Thomas against Atlanta because the Atlanta secondary really, really just is a leaky secondary, and they give up big plays all the time. And whatever you want to do against Atlanta secondary, you can basically do it. So if Thomas wants to run a 10-yard hook or a 15-yard dig or a 20-yard comeback route to the sideline, Drew Brees is going to be able to get him the ball whenever he wants to get him the ball. Atlanta gives up 42 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. So I think Michael Thomas is firmly in play here. Another play that I like is Jamison Crowder. So Jamison Crowder, who has kind of had an up and down year so far for the Jets, and due to that is largely because Sam Darnold has been hurt. He had missed a couple of games with mono. But last week against Miami, a team who struggles rushing the passer, Crowder had 9 targets, but he caught 8 of them, and he had a touchdown. So 22.3 fantasy points for Crowder. And what's even more appealing is that his price tag is still hovering around $5K. This week he goes up against the Giants, and the Giants are pretty bad against the pass. So I think Crowder is definitely in a good position to have success. And because of that, I think Darnold likes to pepper Crowder with targets. I mean, it's very documented that Darnold sees ghosts in the pocket, as he said live against the Patriots when they were playing the Patriots. So I think Darnold looks to Crowder a lot as a safety blanket when he's trying to get rid of the ball here. So Crowder in a matchup against the Giants, who allow 42 fantasy points per game to wide receivers, seems to make a lot of sense here. My honorable mention for wide receiver is Devontae Adams for Green Bay. Now, last week, Adams was really held in check by the Los Angeles Chargers. He had 11 targets, only caught 7 balls for 41 yards. The Green Bay offense really could never get it going in this game. I don't anticipate that to happen again. I think Adams and the whole offense for Green Bay is set for a bounce-back game at home versus Carolina. Now, let's move on to tight end, which is where it gets kind of tricky this week with the pricings and the overall pricings of tight end in general. So one play that I really like is George Kittle, and it makes a lot of sense. But since he's not on the slate here, we have to pick other players and figure out what we like. So one other play that I like is TJ Hawkinson. And the reason why I like Hawkinson is the fact that the Bears are struggling right now guarding tight ends. Last week, as a prime example, we saw Zach Ertz do whatever he wanted against the Bears. He was able to catch, I believe, 8 passes for over 100 yards, getting you the DraftKings 100-yard receiving bonus, and he got a touchdown. And the reason I like Hawkinson is because he's been getting some targets. When the Lions need to pass, they usually go to Golladay or Jones. However, the Bears have very good cornerbacks, so I think that Detroit's going to have to game plan Hawkinson into the game more because of the fact that Chicago's cornerbacks can relatively take out Jones and Golladay from this game. So with that being said, Hawkinson is in a very good position. I like his price tag at $3.9K. The Bears give up about 15 fantasy points per tight end, and I think Hawkinson is in line to see a large percentage of those points come his way this week. Now let's get to some defenses. And the defense that really jumps out to me right away is a very cheap defense. However, just because they're cheap doesn't mean that they can't have a productive day, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I like defenses that can pressure the quarterback, create turnovers, and if they're playing at home, that also helps. The Pittsburgh Steelers pressure the quarterback, create turnovers, and they're playing against home. They're playing at home against the Los Angeles Rams. And one thing about the Steelers, like I mentioned earlier, they can pressure the quarterback. The Steelers have 29 sacks on the season, and they pressure the quarterback on a total of 15% of all plays and have an 18% sack rate on passing plays. Those are both the highest percentage of sacks and pressure in the NFL. Now, this week they get to play against the Los Angeles Rams offensive line, who has really had their struggles recently because they've been mixing and matching different pieces of that offensive line together, and they've been struggling so far. So with the Steelers at home, I think this is a very good play at a price tag of $2.6K. It seems to make a lot of sense here. But if you can't stomach the Steelers against the Rams, I have another play for you, and that is the Indianapolis Colts at home versus the Miami Dolphins and the walking turnover machine that is Ryan Tannehill. So I like the Colts, A, because they're at home, B, because they're playing the defense, or they're playing the Miami Dolphins, and C, because of the fact that over the last 3 games, the Colts have 4 turnovers and 7 sacks. And I think that trend can continue against the Miami team that has one of the highest turnover margins in the NFL. So with that being said, everyone, if you liked my video and if you liked any of my strategical analysis and tips that I've brought into this, I would greatly appreciate it. As I said before, if you could drop me a like and subscribe to my channel, and I will catch you all next week as I come out with a DraftKings NFL Week 10 video. And with that being said, everyone, let's have a good week and good luck. Bye-bye. Thanks.